It's already 11:01, so we can get started. So, for everyone, welcome to join our second meeting of a new season of our SIGCOMM Paper Reading Group. So, this week, we'll focusing on a measurement paper, and the title really tells about what's to be measured, right? Essentially, it's caching on the edge. And caching really is a very classic and probably very well known concept for in computer networks and systems. Not only our internet use cache, we operating system they also use cache, and also there are a bunch of designs in terms of protocols and distributed system. They all use the design. They all introduce this design of cache to improve the efficiency, in particular improving the throughput and reducing the latency. So I think this is exactly this paper is trying to understand basically I believe that this paper is trying to understand what role edge caching plays in terms of in terms of guarantee or providing different types of quality of experiences to users, in particular streaming providers. So this week we will have Yiningjiang from Xiamen University as a presenter. Essentially, this is the first part of the meeting, and in the second part of the meeting, we are honored to invited Muhammad from EPFL, the first author of this paper, to join us for a live Q&A and discussion. So I think without further ado, I think Yining, you can have the floor. You can start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the opening. Hello everyone, I'm Yiningjiang from Xiamen University. It's my honor to share the SIGCOMM 2025 Best Student Paper, Edge Caching as Differentiation, which is a joint work between EPFL and Virginia Tech. In recent years, the rapid expansion of internet has led to a surge in traffic from end users. More and more providers are replicating content from original centralized servers to edge data centers or edge servers like ISP or CDNs. Taking edge caching in CDNs as an example, closest to the user. At the edge, there are layer 1 or L1 caches. Behind those, we have larger L2 caches, and behind those lie the original server. So a service with more L1 cache hits would perform better than a service with more L2 cache hits, and that would perform better than a service with more cache misses. When an end user requests to perform sensitive content, the response typically comes through the CDN edge cache, which is physically located within or close to the end user. Edge caching has so many advantages. For example, reduce access latency, offload the original server, save backbone bandwidth, improve content availability, enhance user experience, enable service differentiation, and so on. So what is traffic differentiation? It is when a network do something that causes an end user to express one piece of online content with better quality of experience or QoE, and another piece of online content with a worse QoE. Typically, when we talk about traffic differentiation, we usually imagine a setup like this. The network separates traffic into different queues and gives high priority to one type of content. As a result, users may experience lower QoE for the other low priority content. But this paper thinks that there's another reason why an end user may view different content with different QoE edge caching. Let's consider a network that doesn't intentionally prioritize any traffic. What it does have, though, is an edge cache from a CDN. Now, suppose a user is watching videos from two different video streaming services, A and B, both of which rely on that same CDN. They have the same kind of contract with the CDN to host or catch their content on its edge caches, which implies that both services subscribe to the same payment plan for edge caching. Now, if A is much more popular than B, then naturally service A would achieve a much higher cache hit rate than B. So for example, if A has a hit rate of 99%, that means 99% of the requests for service A would be delivered directly from the cache, resulting in faster response time and thus better QoE. It is opposed to B, where the request would have to go all the way to original server, resulting in slower response times and thus worse QoE. So edge caching can lead to different cache hit rates across services. But even though we know that, a further question is, do these differences in hit rates actually result in significant differences in QoE? To answer this question, let's see some results from two real video streaming services that the authors actually measured. One with the high hit rate of 99% and the other with a hit rate of just 40%. When measuring their videos from clients, we can observe that on average videos from service B took 2.5 decades longer to start playback, and based on a popular study by Alchemy, this additional delay can translate to roughly 30% users abandoning the video. Moreover, when a client with low bandwidth connection, we found that on average videos from service B froze 2.8 times in 1 minute of playback as compared to just 1 time for service A. And based on a study from Columbia on YouTube videos, multiple rebuffering events can increase abandonment by 3 times. And finally, we also observed that videos from service B had, on average, 20% lower playback quality than those from service A. In summary, we have two streaming services, both customers of the same CDN, and yet they achieve very different hit rate, and thus users experience them with very different QoE. So edge caching is also a form of traffic differentiation. It is not intentional, it is not malicious, but it happens because of the dynamics of shared caching. But why do such differences in hit rates exist? Some people might think, what's the big deal? Service A is more popular than B, so of course it has a higher hit rate. 20 years ago, such a statement would have been controversial. The network was supposed to be neutral, which means not to prioritize traffic from popular content providers, in order to foster competition and innovation. The rationale was to even the playing field, such that new and not yet popular content providers had a chance to compete against the established players. Some people might think Service A achieved much better cache hit rate because it paid the CDN more than B. Well, it is possible but unlikely. Basic CDN pricing is common for all customers, meaning that they pay the same per byte requested from the cache plus an additional mistext or fetching data from the origin as a result of cache miss. So that means less popular services actually pay more because of this mistext, and obviously this creates an extra challenge for newcomers. CDN also offer additional features. For example, customers may choose the location of L2 caches and in some cases reserve space in the L2. However, there is no such service available for L1 caches. The customers cannot pick CDNs to get the guaranteed L1 hit rate, and so naturally, more popular services attain higher L1 hit rate. Other people may ask, how do you know that caching providers do not privately negotiate different caching service with their customers? Obviously, none of us can know that, but publicly offering one set of services and fees while privately negotiating different ones with the selected customers could be problematic. Now, in order to see the QE disparities caused by catching, this paper conducted a large-scale measurement study where they collected data from 8 different locations around the world covering 5 major CDNs and different content providers, including 24 video services and 19 social media platforms. And in dataset, this paper had L1, L2 hit rate as well as latency measured across a period of 30 days, and that amounts to about 30 million different measurements. Each measurement client assessed each target content provider every day for 30 days. First, this paper used a crawler to get URLs of the most popular contents. Then the measurement client sent HTTP HEAD request to the edge cache, which can get the same response head as real GET request but introduce less traffic. If cache missed, the edge cache will obtain the content from the original server. The response contains HTTP response including cache providers, L1 location, hit type, and the timing recording by the client like DNS overhead, TCP TLS handshake overhead, and TTFB. Note that each client waited for 24 hours before repeating the measurements to reduce the risk that its own requests affect the hit rates and it subsequently matters. Deploy crawler as far as possible from the measurement client to avoid affecting L1 hit rate, but it may affect any L2 hit rates, because it is possible that a crawler request and a measurement client request for the same object were directly to the same L2 cache. To eliminate the impact of network congestion on QoE, the first time a client received a response from an L1 cache, it identified a border IP address, which is on the path from the client to the L1 cache, but is located outside the cache provider. During the day, ping border IP every 100 milliseconds. If it's bigger than 5% RTTs, it's indicated it means that it happens congestion. So this paper ignored the measurements for that L1 cache. And how to determine whether the request was L1 hit, L2 hit, or missed. All cache providers explicated the state in the HTTP response header, whether a request was a hit or a miss. Two of them also stated whether it was an L1 or L2 hit. For the other 3 providers, this paper inferred L1 and L2 hits by clustering measured latencies per vantage point cache providers and connect providers using a Gaussian mixture model or JMM, assuming the first cluster corresponds to L1 hits and the second to L2 hits. For hit rates, this paper computed L1 hit rate, L2 hit rates, and overall hit rate for each video vantage point measurement day and each social media platform vantage point measurement day tuple. This hit rate is defined as the number of the hits divided by the total number of requests. The overall hit rate is the sum of L1 hit rate and the L2 hit rate. Let's say the video stream service first. A key property of a video is its bitrate, which means the amount of information per time unit that is encoded in the video. The bitrate depends on the video's frame rate, its resolution, and its content. A video hosted on a video streaming platform is typically organized in chunks, and each chunk is typically available in multiple resolutions and bit rates. CDN-based video streaming process have 5 steps. First, DNA resolution. The end user's device obtains the IP address of a L1 cache. Second, the TCP/TLS handshake. Third, the initialization phase. Player requests the manifest, which including available bitrates and URLs, and requests the DRM license and the initial segment, including the video decoding metadata. Then is the initial buffering phase. Player downloads enough chunks to fill its buffer, typically 2 or 3 chunks. In this paper, they use 2. Playback starts once the buffer is filled. And finally, the continuous exchange. The player waits for response before next, and keep requesting chunks to maintain a full buffer. Standard video QoE metrics including average bitrate captures overall image quality. Bitrate variety is the average bitrate difference between 2 subsequent chunks. It captures the fact that changes in image quality are annoying to end users. Rebuffering overhead is the time the player spends waiting because it has not fully received the next chunk. Startup delay is the time from the moment the end user clicks on the video until the player starts to playing. It covers DNS resolution, TCP/TLS handshake, initialization, and the initial buffering. The formula is as follows. This paper used adjusted bitrate with the given weight to represent the overall QoE of a video. For video quality measurements, the first chunks, the web crawler get the 100 most popular videos and download the manifest file, extract the URLs of the first 50 chunks, because this paper thinks that the first chunks is more likely to be cached. And by stitching the HTTP response and the teaming together, this paper created the latency trace for each video, which contains information about latency as well as cache hit status of each video segment in that video. The next step is to translate that into video QoE, and to do that, this paper finds these latency traces into Cerebro, which is an open source video player that simulates playback to accumulate real video QoE metrics. Now, we all know QoE depend on so many factors. In order to isolate caching true impact on QoE, this paper eliminated this dependency by using same parameters for all videos when they feed the trace into Cerebro. For example, the content. 150 second, they use 150 second HD H.264 video, 550 chunks, bitrates as the following, and matching different bitrate resolution. Also, the DNS overhead. 2 latency clusters observed, they get the representative values. 0 millisecond, which means this was cached, and 123 millisecond, which means it's uncatched. So now we can see that the QoE depends only on caching. Now let's look at some of the results. This scatter plot shows L1 and L2 hit rates of video streaming services that the client managed in Indonesia. So on the x-axis, we have CDNs or caching providers with anonymized names like P1 and P3, and each data point is showing that one streaming services specifically and its average value. And we see big difference in the hit rate. Let's focus on the P3. So in the P3, the most catch service had on average L1 hit rate of 99%, and for the least catch service, it was only 34%. So now, how does this difference translate into QoE? With a client bandwidth of 25 megabit per second and miss latency set to just 62 millisecond, catch misses have little impact on QoE. But as we increase their latency to 370 milliseconds, the difference becomes much more. The least catch services had 10% lower average than the most catched service. And at 900 milliseconds of the miss latency, this difference was 33% lower. And we see these differences and even bigger differences in all locations all around the world where we had set up the measurement client. For example, at 900 milliseconds of the miss latency, the difference between the least catch and the most catched service was 29%. 41% and even 50%, we can conclude that the hit rate indeed affects the QoE. So since this adjusted bit rate is a aggregate matrix, so let's focus on one of its components, the setup delay. So videos from least catch the service took 1.5 seconds, 3.5 seconds, and even 4.5 seconds longer to start playback as compared to videos from most catch service. Latency is also one of the factors contributing to the degradation of QoE. Let's say the browsing experience. When a user opens a web page, caching mainly affects how quickly the first few contentful objects load. The page displays faster and the users start viewing the content sooner. The loading time of the remaining content may not impact QoE if the first few objects are engaging and lightweight. The page allows users to start consuming content immediately. Smart clients may prefetch incoming content, hiding later loading delays. So this paper used two metrics to represent the QoE. First, the time to first contentful paint is the time to download the first contentful object in the visited page. It matters because it determines when the end user first perceives that the page is responding. Second, time to the largest contentful paint is the theme to download the largest contentful object in the visited page. It matters because the largest object often contains what the content provider considers the most important content. And this matrix determines when the end users can start consuming this content. Each measurement client assessed each target provider every day for 30 days too. And for browsing experience for each platform, the crawler get 1,000 catchable elements on the homepage, and then at the same as followed. Also, they get the latency trace and get the QoE metrics. So here is the results. Here is the results of browsing experience, and it shows that it is more. The difference is smaller than the video streams, and all the requests can catched by the L1 catch or L2 catch, and so the QoE difference is not obvious. Now let's conclude today's paper. This paper presents a series of data that confirm the following findings. First, edge caching produces implicated differentiation in QE and much lower weight arises from the dynamics of shared caches and content popularity. The following picture can conclude the findings. It shows the adjusted bitrate or QE as a function of the missed latency. So the at the top of the red shows the QE of a content that is 100% cached. So it appears as a flat line unaffected by missed latency. Whereas the bottom curve in blue shows the QE for content that is not a cache at all, so it's most affected by missed latency, and the gap between these two QE curves show potential competitive disadvantages that an unpopular service can face, and this gap widens as the missed latency grows. Someone may think that as time goes on and the internet connectivity improves, missed latencies will decrease and the QE gap will eventually disappear. However, a more real expectation is that over time, both our definition of QE and the user's expectations will continue to evolve. Therefore, the gap between cached and uncached content is likely to persist. That's all. Thanks you for your listening.
Thanks, Yiningjiang, for the presentation. It's very interesting. Indeed, it's a very interesting paper. So now we will move on to the second part. Well, Mohammed will answer questions from the audience. And so anyone, if you have any questions, you can just speak, or you can also type in the chat channel. But let me first break the ice for Mohammed. So I'm speaking from my personal experience. I'm not an environment person, so sometimes I occasionally did read papers from IMC and also from past few years SIGCOMM. There are I recall like last year's best paper is also a measurement paper, measuring the BGP collection data. And also another in 2018, the best paper is from Kaida and David Clark, who was trying to measure and observe persistent congestion in the internet, right? So indeed, environment you represent a very large part of our community. But to Mohammed, to yourself, so what motivates you to look into edge caching as an object to study that? So what's a very original motivation for you to look into this?
Yeah, so the motivation started from my master's. So during my master's, I was working on web browsing experience. So I was looking at how like Android or other mobile-based operating systems, how they optimize for web browsing. So I was kind of into how the user's experience are impacted by technologies or the things that we use online, the infrastructure and the network. So this was like this thing started from there. So then when I started my PhD, I wanted to do something that where I would look at the impact of having these infrastructures, the network, and all these sort of things. How would they affect the end users, right? And one of the like the main thing that we do online is we watch videos. We watch a lot of cat videos and all. We use a lot of social media, and the underlying thing, the infrastructure is like nowadays it's not like web servers, it's CDN, right? So I have been like, there have been studies that were done that looked at how, like, all know that ISPs, they throttle content and that causes users to experience different content with different quality. But since now most of the content we consume is actually coming from CDN, so the obvious question was, are they doing something that is causing these differences in the quality when the users browse social media or when they watch videos? So this was the motivation to figure that out if things have changed.
Cool. So, but one of the I assume that like one very key takeaway from this paper is even two content providers use the same CDN or the same cache provider, and they pay the same price, but still one provider can have like near 100% hit rate, while the other can have like 40 or even less than 40% hit rate. So, but I also I know that there are a bunch of people working into improve the hit rate of video contents or other social media contents, right? There are all kinds of studies trying to improve the hit rate of caching. So, if I'm not sure what is the state of the art of the cache replacement strategy currently employed in CDN, but have you looked into that by deploying different hit rate would this disparity or this differentiation be narrowed, or you think really different cache algorithm really doesn't matter at all?
I see. Yeah, that's a good question. So this is what we are currently exploring right now. Are there any like intelligent caching strategies that would reduce the difference? Because as far as we know, right now the industry use very simple methods of LRUs. And for example, if some user accesses a content, it would be pushed into the cache, and then there are TTLs. It would live for some time and then would be evicted, right? So they use basic LRUs. So the next question is there something that can be done more intelligently without like that doesn't require a lot of work that would reduce this gap between unpopular and popular content, because this is now a vicious cycle. So unpopular content is not being cached, and because it's not being cached, people are not watching it, and thus it's not becoming popular. So is there something more intelligent that can be done? Yes, I think there can be, but this is something for the future. This is something we need to explore.
I see. Yeah, I see. I understand that. I think that should lead to some very interesting findings in the future. So, okay, back to the paper to a couple of details of this paper. I noticed that in your paper you pick, I think, like 8 vintage points, right, to perform this all the measurements and collect the trace and the data. So what I noticed that most of the vintage points are in Europe and US, but you did pick one from Indonesia. I think that's a very you are essentially trying to be thorough. So any different observations from the vintage point of in Indonesia compared with the other 7 vintage points? Because in the presentation, in Yining's presentation, probably due to the time limit, I didn't see the comparison, or there's no difference at all.
In terms of results, the differences are similar. We see similar kind of differences across all locations. But I can remember, like, for example, in Indonesia, sometimes the requests were going because it doesn't have as big of, for example, if you take AWS or Cloudflare, they don't have as big of an infrastructure in Indonesia compared to the
Exactly.
US. So we see a lot of the requests were going to other countries, like close by countries. They were like, for example, going to some place in Europe or in Italy, even though the services in Indonesia. So I'm assuming that once the infrastructure gets overwhelmed, the requests are then forwarded to other caches in other parts of the world. So this is something that I found that was different as compared to the vantage points in US and Europe.
I see. But I was wondering, while I was listening to the presentation, and I only very briefly skimmed through the paper, so there must be some details I missed. But I was wondering, excuse me, if we did, I think in Indonesia, I think that the internet speed in Southeast Asia actually is even faster than in China. I think that's as speaking from the personal experience, who currently lives in China. But suppose we repeat the experiment in Africa or in South America, because I believe in these 2 states, the speed of internet is essentially the availability and the connectivity speed of internet is would be much slower. So would the edge caching basically would you I don't know if you tried the experiment or not, but in your experience, would the results be the same, or like?
Yeah,
something would be
that's
different?
yeah, so that's a good point. So in our paper, we use three different values of network bandwidth, but of course, like in other parts of the world, you can have much higher bandwidth or much lower bandwidth if you consider African countries. But the main issue that like causes the difference in the QoE is the mislatency. So for example, even if the transmission, for example, if the bandwidths are low, if you take countries in Africa, the transmission delays would be higher, but they would be equally higher in all the locations in Africa. So the difference still would come from the difference in the mislatency, how far your origin is as compared to your client, and how far the edge caches are. So for example, if you are in an African country and there are two services, the requests for one service are going to a closer edge cache, whereas the request for the other service is going to an edge cache that is farther away. So these like hit latency and miss latency, they are the ones that cause the differences in the QoE because the bandwidth that affects the transmission delay. And in our paper, we take the same value of network bandwidth when we are comparing. So so that would like eliminate the effect of transmission delay or the effect of network bandwidth. But yeah, of course, like if you do the experiment in the Africa, QoE would be lower, but it would be lower equally in all the locations that you would
Equally,
measure
I see.
for all the services in Africa. But the difference, the disparities would still come from the difference, the miss latency and the hit latency.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I think that indeed that makes sense. But since still going to the very original example, yeah, or the findings in this paper, basically we have two. Suppose we only have two providers in the world, two content providers, and one currently have like a close to 100% cache hit rate, and the other one has like 45% hit rate. So as you said, as we observed in the paper from all the experiments, essentially lower hit rate would essentially lead to a lower quality of experiences. And
Yep.
then, we all know that suppose if video streaming takes more than 3 seconds to load, and then we probably will just lose interest. So does that mean in the long term, what would be a content provider B do to improve its hit rate? Before this question, I would imagine suppose it does nothing. Suppose it does nothing. Would essentially like the users will all switch to content provider A, essentially leading to a monopoly in the market?
Yeah,
What do you think?
yeah,
Yeah.
I see your point. So, for content providers, hit rate is something that is not in their control because there is like no contract where you could pay the CDN to get a specific cache hit rate. You can't like pay the CDN to cache all of your content in the cache. You can't do that. So the only thing that the content providers can do is innovate in other areas. For example, they can have better compression so that their videos are like smaller in size, or they could have better UI, so that these other areas, if they innovate in these areas, they will be able to attract more users so that they eventually become popular. And when they become popular, obviously they will enjoy higher hit rate as same as like the popular service. But the cache hit rate and latency, this is not something that it's in their control. It's something that the CDNs control. For example, if you take CDN, and if CDNs do something more intelligently, so that, for example, if I am opening a new streaming service, right? And I know that
Right,
this CDN is doing something more intelligent that would give me some advantage until I become popular, and I won't be like left alone, and users like my users won't experience my service with like very bad QoE. I would still get something. So that CDN will get more customers, right? So it's also an incentive for the CDN. If they do something more intelligently, they will get more new customers that would be willing to pay to them for caching their content.
I see. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Chen Xingji also has a similar question. I think it's basically like you just said, if CDN provider is doing things intelligently, maybe it can do something to help. But if CDN provider essentially is just a black box, and we
Yeah.
can like provider B manipulate the cache replacement cache hit rate, basically trying to requesting their content more often by themselves. So in that way, essentially, if I request the same content, then there is a chance that this content will be kept in the cache, and the other users will essentially benefit from my request, essentially
Yeah.
eventually increasing hit rate. Right? Is that possible, or like
Yeah,
because I know yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
see, I see. Technically, it is possible. For example, if you send a million GET requests to the edge caches for your content, but I think there are like, security measures in place that would be able to detect that. So I don't think it's ethical to do, but this is technically possible. I mean, you can like create a tool that sends a lot of requests to all the caches around the world for your content, and that can push the content into the edge cache. But I think I'm assuming that CDNs would have something in place to detect these sort of things.
Right. Yeah, but still that could well, let's see. I think this, like you said, I agree with you. This is definitely possible. But
Yeah, that
would but in terms of the benefit, what would be the benefit? I think essentially, so yeah, I
lower
think
latency
it really
for
depends
the
on
user.
how often the cat. Sorry, I interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, no, it's okay. You can go on.
I'm just thinking on the spot here, right? So, say so I'm the provider. I'm provider B, content provider B. I request this one video, so that other users can find it in the cache, and so that would initially, so that would benefit on maybe I'm just saying maybe benefit the first 20 or 30 users who request the video,
Yeah,
because even if even if I don't do that, and after these 20 or 30 users request this video would already very likely would already be in the cache.
yeah,
So all other users essentially would essentially we also enjoy the videos, right? So I think that does that mean this disparity or this differentiation only affect a small percentage of users or quality of users QE.
You're right in saying that because like most popular service, like the services that enjoy really good hit rate, usually have very large user base. So for example, Prime Video, Hulu, or other
Mm-hmm.
services, Plus, they already have a lot of users. The services that suffer, the unpopular one, usually have lower user base, which is why they are unpopular. So in terms of like if you're comparing like how many users are affected by these sort of disparities, then yes, like fewer
Mm-hmm.
users compared to the users of the popular service are affected by these disparities. But that does not negate the fact that disparities exist and
Mm-hmm.
something that we need to do so that at least you don't block new services from coming up. There has to be something
I
done
see.
more urgently.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I noticed that
Down the
in
market,
your
you're creating sort
experiment.
of a more, yeah.
Yeah, so sorry. I'm just saying that in your experiment methodology, you said after you request one, you wait for another 24 hours to do
Yeah.
another request to avoid this one being being added to cache, so that you would essentially tend to your measurement results, right? I
Yeah.
think that definitely makes sense. But just out of curiosity, have you did you came up this 24-hour threshold before you conduct the experiment, or like you noticed something that this could happen, so you set after, so you noticed this could happen first, and then you set this threshold?
Yeah,
Because
actually,
if it's mhm.
yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can complete.
Oh, yeah, because if it if it is the second case,
Yeah.
my follow-up question it would be, have you in have you looked into this is related to what I just said, right? So only a few first users who request this content will suffer a low QoE, but others they will not suffer the QoE, right? So I'm just curious.
I see, I see.
What have you observed that? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
so
not that definitely not complete, but just want just curious about that. Yeah.
yeah, so this is something like the first part. This is something that I actually observed. So when I was starting my experimentations, like I was reading the measurement after like 2, 3
Mm-hmm.
hours. For example, if you run one measurement and you see, let's say, 20% hit rate of one streaming service, if you run that measurement again in like 1 or 2 hours, you would see close to 100% because you've now pushed,
Mm-hmm.
because of you're sending so many requests, you've pushed all of the content into the cache. So then I looked
Right.
at the TTL values and how, like on average, how long it takes for the caches to awake. And usually it's like 12 to 24 hours. So 24 hours seem to be a nice number. So that like
Mm-hmm.
when the next time we measure it, it's the measurement results won't be affected by our earlier measurement. So this was the one thing. And the second part, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you were asking like if only the first few users would be affected by the difference in the QoE. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right, the first few users would be the next after the first few users access the
Mm-hmm.
content would be pushed into the cache. The next users would enjoy the
Mm-hmm.
video with good quality. So unless the video stays at a certain level of popularity, more
Mm-hmm.
users keep on enjoying the video. Or for example, if a video is viral, so for one
Yeah,
or 2 weeks,
exactly.
everyone
Yeah.
would enjoy it. But if the
Right.
video
Right.
does not stay popular, then eventually
Mm-hmm.
after some time, after 50, 100 or thousands of users, after some time, that
Yeah. Yeah.
popularity would reduce and the content would be affected. So the next time users would fetch that video, they would
Mm-hmm.
experience a low quality. So in order to sustain this high hit rate, the video has to consistently be popular or stay popular. And
Mm-hmm.
if in the start the video is if it's not cached, users user play it, it takes longer to load, the user won't watch it again, and the video would not become popular or stay popular enough to be cached in the cache later on.
Ah, I see. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that definitely. I think that this doesn't contradict what you found, but in certain way it complements or it basically complements what you observed in the paper, right? So I think that, yeah, that definitely that means basically like all those influencers, they have to try really hard to to keep their videos to be keep their videos or their posts to be viral, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, okay, I think, I think I'm all used up all my technical questions, but I do have a couple like non-technical questions for you, Mohammed. So,
yeah, sure.
uh, I think that um, I know that this paper, similar to many other measurement papers, would takes a lot of time. But I mean, all SIGCOMM paper and NSDI papers, they each of them takes a long time, but it's different, right? So some for some system optimization or scheduling or other system building papers, I think a bunch of time is invested in designing and implementing and testing, tuning the system. But in measurement paper, I was basically collecting the data takes a lot, a tremendous time, right? So,
Yeah.
so I need because my group doesn't work on measurement, but I know there are students who are interested in this. So I need suggestions like for new beginners. I mean, definitely it takes so much time. Some students may get scared, right? So they think, hey, I only have limited time, uh, and if I couldn't, in particular with all those AI conferences, they produce papers at a very high speed. So how basically what was would any suggestion for the beginners in this area, like
Yeah.
any experience or any any trick they can benefit from?
Sure, absolutely. So this is something that you learn by hit and trial and by experience. So measurement work, you would spend most of your time setting up the measurement.
Mhm.
And
Right,
the
right.
analysis and the results, and they don't take a lot of time. Like I would say 90% of the time is spent on
Hmm.
setting up infrastructure to collect the measurement. And the most important
Yeah.
part is to make sure that the measurement infrastructure that you have in place, it's robust, it's error free, and it's
Hmm.
reproducible. So many a
Right.
times it would happen like you set up something to collect measurement and you collect the measurement for a month, and after you get the results, you find out, oh, I made some small mistake and now the measurements are not usable. So this has
Right.
happened to
Right.
many a times. So I would
Mm-hmm.
my advice would be spend as much time as you can trying to figure out if there are issues in your measurement infrastructure before you actually start taking measurement, because this is the most important part. Once you have a very robust measurement infrastructure in place, then you can take measurement and do all sort of creative or interesting analysis, but spend more time designing and making sure that the measurement system that you have in place that works flawlessly. Because even a small mistake, you would spend a lot of time collecting the measurement, and after that you would realize, oh, I made this mistake, so I need to do
Yeah.
the 3 months work all over again. So
Mm-hmm.
this is one advice that I would give to someone who's starting in measurement, because this is something I went through when I was starting.
I see. Yeah. I think essentially my take would be when you design your experiments or design your measurement methodology, you have to try to be as thorough as possible to
Yeah,
avoid any possible, like for example this 24-hour threshold what you did in
yeah.
the paper. I think that definitely that is something that the students and other researchers that definitely could learn from
Yeah,
and
yeah.
benefit
Another
from.
another advice I think I should mention is start
Mm-hmm.
small. You don't need to have like 100 VMs deployed all across the globe and then you
Mm-hmm.
check measurement system is working.
Right.
Start very small. Take one VM, take one tool, just take some measurements, a
Mm-hmm.
smaller model of the bigger measurement system, and see if it works. Once you're sure it
I
works,
see.
then go to the bigger model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this is also a mistake that I made. So I would like
Mm-hmm.
deploy the VMs and all these things, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then I would take the measurement. It would take a long time to check whether the system is working well or not, and you end up like wasting a lot of the time. So it's better to start small, make sure it
Mm-hmm.
works, then go big. This is
Mm-hmm.
another advice
Yeah, I
I would.
think that's
Thank you.
valuable lesson for not just the measurement community, but for I think for the whole for our whole community. That very valuable suggestions. I think I hope my students who are in this meeting can really take this with such a suggestion in mind. I think listening it from you definitely it would be different than listening me yelling at them repeatedly. Yeah. So, Chen Xing also had another question. I will just read it. So, was there any measurement about the amount of content the CDN can cache? In other words, if you have request enough different contents and a QE would occur.
Oh, I see. Okay, I understand the point. So
Mhm,
yeah, I mean, you can estimate it using this method, but I mean, the information is available online. For example, Netflix have caches, or they are, I think, called OCAs, and they have like all the
mhm,
technical details listed, like the what kind of processor, the RAM, and the cache space. Usually, it's in an order of terabytes, like 100 terabyte or something like that. So you can estimate it with this, but this information you can also get it online. The servers are very standard. The caches are very standard.
I see. Okay, I think that definitely answers Chen Qing's question. Cool. So in your paper, like what's the most challenging part during this work? Where you found like like a very very difficult or like a very challenging, very time consuming, like making you in certain way feeling desperate.
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
yeah.
There were a lot of challenges, but I think the most challenging part was the measurement setup, specifically the web crawlers, because
Mhm,
each streaming service is designed differently. So you can't have like one script that would just play the video, fetch the manifest, and in the slides, in the presentation, it looked very easy, but in fact, it's like
mhm,
very difficult because you have like hundreds of different streaming services. So now you have to manually check how these streaming services operate, and then according to that you would write a script that would crawl and fetch the video segment and also the web pages they also change very rapidly. So for example, you write a crawler one day, the next day doesn't work. It's not because your code is wrong,
Yeah,
because the web page has changed. So I
yeah.
spent a lot of time writing crawlers for different video streaming and social media platforms, and then it kept on changing, and then I had to update my code. And so yeah, that was very frustrating. But of course, you learn a lot by doing that.
Out of curiosity, which you mentioned that you wrote a crawler and it works today, but tomorrow for the same provider it doesn't work because the provider changed their design, changed their system. So
Yeah.
in your experience, like which content provider changes their code or changes their system most frequently, or the similar question, which provider is the latest one?
I see.
Yeah.
Usually the most popular ones, they are the one who change their interface like very quickly. Things change on their web page very quickly, so the web crawlers don't work. But unpopular service, they tend to not change their web page a lot because I think it's also because their library is small. Don't so the other service they keep on adding new stuff and new videos and movies, shows and whatever, and so their the web page elements and things that change. But for unpopular service, the change was less severe as compared to the popular ones.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that makes sense, right? The most popular provider, probably they have a larger team of engineers, so they have to do something every week to show that they are really doing things. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so I think let's see if other question in the chat. Seems not. I think so. Have in your work, I asked question about Africa and South America, but I didn't ask question about China. Have you tried China? I know you probably one of the reasons I can think of you didn't try China, or because some content providers are uh, they do not have companies they do not have that have their market, they do not provide such services in China, in particular mainland China. But
Yes.
in China, we also have many domestic streaming services, and
Mhm.
like iQIYI and Tencent Videos, and then they are like equals of Netflix and Hulu and Paramount Plus, right? So have you tried that, or
Yeah,
you think it?
we looked into China a
Mhm,
little bit, and because our
mhm,
Vantage Point are EC2 machines hosted on AWS, I don't think there is a
mhm,
at that time there wasn't
mhm,
a way to place an EC2 machine in China, if I remember correctly. So I think this was one of the reason we end up not
mhm,
running measurements in China. And also in China, like I was looking at different video streaming services, and I couldn't find a lot that were using the standard AWS or Cloudflare. A lot of them were using like Alibaba CDN or other kind of CDN. So there
exactly.
are many CDNs in China. So like this was
Mhm.
another reason. But yeah, of course, like if we do something like this in China, I expect we would see something interesting.
Yeah, because I'm asking this because as you suggested, indeed, the AWS does not have a very large market in China, in particular
Yeah,
mainland China.
yeah.
For example, I think I currently host the website of my research group on Ali Cloud. I used to
Oh,
do that on EC2 in US East Coast, but I think that's too expensive for me. I think it's cheaper to do that things in mainland China. So I figure, yeah, why don't we do that? But I think Akamai is pulling out their services in China. I think
yeah,
I read the news last year, right? So um, for
yeah.
a giant such as Akamai to make such that decision, that mean I think that must mean domestic CDN providers like Alibaba Cloud and other CDN providers, they must be doing something right? So
Yeah,
I think that
competition is quite tough.
yeah. So I guess one thing that definitely we can try, maybe some of students in today's meeting could try to repeat the experiments in Alibaba Cloud and using Alibaba CDN and to see what they could observe, right? I think
Yeah,
there
maybe
could
they
be
could be
something,
doing something. Yeah, maybe they could be doing something more intelligent than Akamai and CloudFront. Maybe they're not using TTLs or these simpler LRUs. Maybe something more intelligent.
maybe, yeah. We'll see. I think, yeah. So I don't know. I don't think I have the cycle to do that at the moment, but definitely it would be a very interesting reproductive study, right? I think MC has this reproductive track, right? I think that should be interesting to try it out. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think I think we're already 1 minute over our scheduled time. So this is indeed a very interesting paper, and I enjoyed the presentation. Yining really did a good job, and also Mohammed, I really appreciate you taking the time to join our reading group. I think you answered many maybe dumb questions from me, I guess, because I'm
No,
really
not at all.
amateur in the measurement community. Yeah, but definitely because I have all these questions because oddly enough, accidentally enough, I'm teaching caching last week and tomorrow, so should be some I need to think about how I teach caching tomorrow, and maybe I should convey something interesting, something from this paper in my lecture.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So again, and let's thank Yining and Mohammed for joining today's meeting, and
Thank you
also
so much.
for everyone. Yeah, and for everyone, we will later post the video for this meeting on YouTube. So please stay tuned. And if I have any further questions, please by all means drop an email to Mohammed, and I'm sure he will be happy to answer that. And thanks everyone again. And I think we can conclude our meeting here. For everyone, have a good day, good evening, and good night. Thank you.